Woohoo! Hello, bright and shiny beacons of light. Welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've been wondering what in the world is coming this year, and if we'll be alright, then do we have the 2025 predictions show for you? Oh boy, already. Today I'll be talking with Dr. Michael Lennox, my all-time favorite astrologer, author of a brilliant new book, Psychic Dreamer, and creator of the Daily Astro Alert about all things for the new year and what they mean for you. So welcome back to the show, Michael. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready to shine, for sure.
Woohoo! All right. Woo. So before we dive right into things, last year I had to try and pry good news out of you. Yeah. Are things looking up or looking down in the stars as you see them for 2025?
Do you remember December 2019? We were doing this.
Yes.
I said to you, change and transformation like you've never seen before on the planet. And you said, well, what do you mean, Michael? Can you tell me what you mean? It's like you've never seen before, right? And then January came, Australia almost burned off the map. I think there was a second impeachment here in the United States. This little virus started moving out of China. I was on the phone every morning in January of 2020 with my friend Monique, who's also an astrologer, just cackling at the beginnings of what did turn out to be a major transformational year. We're a little bit like that now.
Wow.
The next 2 years are going to be wild. And I do mean that in compared to the sort of new normal and the place that we're at now. We are moving into all of the outer planets changing signs, which is a big deal when any single one of them changes signs. But to have all three of them changing signs kind of at the same time and Saturn joining them, you have a year where, I'm not trying to obfuscate here, where you really don't know what's going to happen because we've never lived through a planet like Pluto moving into Aquarius. It happened 300 years ago, but we haven't experienced it on this planet at this time, in this moment in our arc. Same thing with Uranus. Uranus brings about wild, sudden shifts and changes, and so when it enters a new sign, we get knocked on our ass, and that's going to happen next year too. Same thing with Neptune. So I'm sitting here not struggling. I'm not going to say that I'm struggling. I'll say this, that I have moved back and forth over the last 6 months into different sort of relationships with what I'm imagining will occur next year. In order to sit here and talk about it from a perspective of hope and resilience and we got this, but no, Michael, it's going to be wild. And it's going to be more unstable than now, more than we've seen, and it already feels pretty unstable. And I'm telling you, that unstable, fast change sensibility is going to whip up into a frenzy this coming summer and then fill out 2026 as well. So in some ways, we're literally moving into what will be a more accelerated experience of radical shift compared even to 2020.
Can it mean at the same time? I'm always going to grasp for the positives here. Yes, and yes. As we've got drones flying across the U.S., and we've seen them the last 2 nights down here in Florida. It's crazy. We actually have Dr. Stephen Greer on tomorrow talking about that. But as we're going through all this nuttiness right now, is it possible that change is taking place so fast that if we put out there what we want, it is even easier for that to come about, or something even better?
Yes. I'll start. Our whole conversation today is going to be a little bit like that, about finding the beautiful threads of outrageously powerful energy that we will all have at our disposal. In fact, I'll say this. They're all relating in the angle of the sextile, the 60-degree angle, which is an angle of potential. It's the angle that if you sit on your couch and eat a bonbon, you will watch the parade pass by. Yes. And that might be nice, but if you want to be in the parade, you got to get the freaking ass off the couch. So I saw a woman talking about a French astrologer who talked about this coming year and about 2020. I wasn't sure if this was someone who was long ago and dead and making future predictions, or if this was a current astrologer.
Yeah.
My sense was that it might have been somebody from many, many years ago looking forward predictively to a vast change in 2020. And what she described as his words were something like a magical reinvention of humanity, a benefic, which is a word she shouldn't have used because that's Jupiter and Venus. But she was talking about his language of the outrageousness of Pluto, slow change, Uranus, fast change, trining each other with the planet of ideologies, beliefs, and spiritual connection, splitting them into this beautiful sort of organized set of productive and potential energies to radically change anything and everything. So if I were looking at that 20 years ago, I might have said, wow, 2025 and 2026 are going to like create nirvana, heaven on earth, because of the angling of these planets and the way they're interacting next year.
Yeah.
Now, we have to factor in how life has moved over the last 5, 10, 20, 30, 100 years, right? What we experience today is a series of constructs of the past that have led us here. So now we know that we're also talking about fast change, slow change, driven by ideologies that's also matching the political narrative. So if I sit in this chair, I can't say to all my folk, oh my God, we're going to reinvent humanity next year and it's going to be mwah, chef's kiss beautiful, even if archetypally that's possible.
Yep.
You and I have conversations like this all the time where we recognize that nothing numinous and expansive can happen before the contraction before it. You can't have an expanded spirituality that was generated by a near-death experience without almost dying.
There is that. And I'm hoping this is not a collective NDE that we're experiencing in 2025.
Well, what I think I'm saying is that the chaos of these few years, where suddenly, I mean, you can even look at just the impact of Pluto in Aquarius for the final time in the last 4 or 5 weeks. War here, there, war there, that government collapsing, things happening in the United States just from, reflecting Pluto moving into this new sign for, the next 20 years. And so we cannot build the age of Aquarius where all of humanity is cared for without cutting through the Gordian knot of the current way polarization and divide has us strangled. So the only way you heal a Gordian knot is Alexander has to come with his sword and cut it open.
Yep.
That has to happen, or there will be no new humanity.
Okay.
And that you don't need an astrologer to tell you. You could just be a critical thinker and turn on the news. What I'm starting to feel very excited about is the positive possibilities, especially of Neptune in Aries, because Neptune is the inspiration planet. It's the planet we call the Great Spirit that connects us to all, to each other, to the collective. Whether you use the G word like I do, I like the word God, though it's not religious in the way that I use it, so that's a bit of a rift. Sometimes I have to, correct. But Neptune is beautiful. And Neptune reflects all of the yummy ways that we connect as a collective. And in the sign of Aries, which is cardinal fire, we will get moving in the direction of our spiritual desires in a way that since 2011 we've been marinating on the inside for, like Neptune in Pisces in his own sign since 2011 has allowed millions of people on the planet to have a deep spiritual awakening. Now that Neptune's going to move into Aries, it's no longer going to be acceptable to have your yummy, lovely, spiritual sort of stuff happen in private, and only for you there's going to be a need to move out into the world in a little bit more of an activated way, helping create new community and shifting things where there's room for growth and harmony to occur. Because the world is so chaotic and scary, you can see it already happening. There's all sorts of movements and voices rising up that want to shift and change things, you know, in a more positive direction. And it starts next year in earnest, for better or for worse.
Thank you. So I want to get to January nodes of the moon. The question is, do I start with January nodes of the moon, or do I start with the ingresses? What those are? You're calling this the year of ingresses.
Yes, yes.
and something about getting our butts kicked. Thank you.
Let's start with the nodes of the moon, Michael, because there's a shift. And there's my little puppy dog's tail. Penelope, come say hi. She's camera shy. Let's start with the nodes of the moon, because where the north node is going is helpful to this thing that I've just been talking about in terms of inner spiritual dynamism that's getting ready to be expressed out in the world more.
Okay.
So let's start with the nodes.
Great, thank you. So if we look at the nodes of the moon, what are nodes of the moon? And there are nodes of the moon that are changing sign in January.
So the nodes of the moon are an artifact of energy from the principle of moving bodies in space. This is physics. This isn't, you know, hooey or moo woo. Like, the nodes aren't like a metaphysical point. They are structural. In the spirit of moving bodies, you've got this groove of the Earth's orbit around the sun. We call this the ecliptic. So the sun is just constantly moving around the sun in this groovy kind of way. And then the moon is circling the Earth. So you've got the moon crossing the path of this ecliptic every month with its cycle. And then twice a year, because of the angles, you've got a lunar cycle where the moon is tilted up. So the shadow that's always there, you know, the shadow is always in space.
Yeah.
The sun's very bright. The planets block the sun. And the shadow of the sun is always visible if you were sitting up there, right? But it's the passing through the shadow that happens because of the nodes of the moon. So it's like an angular relationship. When the Earth, moving through that groove, gets to a point that's near the south node, which we call the past, then we have an eclipse relating to the archetypal sign that that south node is in. And then 6 months later, the sun angles by the north node. The moon crosses through the shadow, and we have two eclipses that are connected to the opposite, this north node. So there's two directions, the north and the south. So what we get to have in terms of interpretation by knowing where the nodes of the moon are is that these archetypes are constellations of energy that are part of our human experience. And when we focus on them as a kind of intention of what we want to dwell in and where we want our transformations to take place, we benefit. For example, the last 18 months has had the nodes of the moon in the relationship trajectory of Aries and Libra, where the south node has been in Libra for 18 months and the north node has been in Aries. Aries, Libra are the self and other polarity in astrology. South node in Libra has been having us experience transformational experiences, because eclipses bring fated occurrences that change us. And what we've been moving away from more than anything else is things that are shadowy of Libra: passivity, people pleasing, not being willing to get up and move and take risks to accomplish your life. And the north node has been in Aries. Get up off the couch, take some action, move with fire, let go of, playing small. Libra says, I want to keep things in balance. And if staying small accomplishes that, yay. But fire and movement is sort of what we want to have been focusing on in the last 18 months. So the nodes shift backwards; they don't move forwards in archaeology. I was going to say archaeology. I'm an archaeologist. All of this. They move backwards.
Yeah.
So the North Node is now moving into Pisces on January 11th, and that puts the South Node into Virgo. Why I love this for the conversation that we've just been talking about in terms of meeting the changes that are coming with a kind of spiritual, warrioristic, I am good with my center because I know who I am, is moving away from Virgo, which means away from getting caught in the details, away from perfectionism, away from getting so mired up in the how to do something that you never take movement or action. It's also the body sign, right? Mars and Aries invented the body, but Virgo invented how the body works. And so one of the things we're thinking about the next 18 months is how to transform our embodied experience and let go of being distracted every day and lean more into being deeply connected every day. Pisces, North Node, spiritual center. I love that as the North Node is moving into Pisces, saying the whole collective is moving in the direction of a greater awareness of we are one. Just as the planet that rules Pisces is going to move into the action movement sign of Aries in the same year. So the nodes and the eclipses are saying your spiritual center is the most important thing. Everything else will emanate from that. That's just a law and a truth that I believe, that if I put my spiritual fitness first, everything else unfolds well. And Pisces North Node is giving us eclipse energy to transform that which would keep us mired in my body is everything, and move in the direction of, oh, my spirit is everything, and it fills my body and moves it. But let's get onto that spiritual path more profoundly next year, and we'll be supported to do so.
Is that what a lot of teachers call kind of this, it's not my preferred terminology, but I don't know a better one yet, 3D to 5D, going from embodied in the physical to...
Yes. Perfect way to put it. And yeah, that is really what all of us have had to do, is to learn, or are doing, is to learn how to be in two dimensions at the same time. And nobody gets to do that without being pummeled in the 3D world, right? Like our bodies, get like beaten up so that we learn to open up to spirit. But you're absolutely right. It's about allowing us to focus enough on the dual experience of being in a body, but also in the energy that's holding the body. So yes, I think that's a perfect way of saying it.
Thank you. Now, one of the things, and I'm privy to your notes here of what's coming in this year, and this one I had to laugh at. It says when we have the South Node into Virgo, we move forward by faith and connection and release perfectionistic control. And I think what that means is a surrender beyond anything we have ever seen or imagined, as I am personally experiencing right now.
Yes, right? And by surrendering to the thing you couldn't control at all, which was all the three-dimensional bumps, we find the flow to trust that we'll get where we need to go. Without making it all about the bumps or all about the spiritual bypass. Oh, all is love and light. So yeah, those words, by the way, like perfectionist, what did I say? Perfectionistic control?
You said by faith and connection. Oh, let me repeat that. Move forward by faith and connection, release perfectionistic control.
That's right. Faith connection, Pisces, perfectionistic control, Virgo. You know, sometimes it's just about like orienting yourself to put prayer before everything you do. Like that, one of the biggest shifts for me in what I would call my sort of tourist chapters, where I was visiting a spiritual life to living one, was part of it, at least in the prayer mental piece, was putting prayer in front of everything so that I was living an idea that the behaviors I was engaging in would be smoother, more graceful, more powerful if I incorporated the 5-dimensional hit with, hey, prayerful moment. Now we eat, now we drink, now we walk, now we drive, now we do an interview, now we have a session. Another thing that this reminds me of is something I've been thinking about. In this dark of the year time, I've been in an odd place and been struggling in my personal life. My body is just killing me with this long COVID and chronic fatigue, and my inner life has been like a movie. Like just Mars and Mercury retrograde at the same time in my 12th and 8th house, the houses of mysticism. It's just been chef's kiss. But one of the things that I've noticed is, and I've heard this from lots of people, where they compare their experience from one moment to another, and that's disastrous, right? Where it's like, ooh, if I can ride like a surfer on the, you know, with my Merkaba on the Kundalini on Tuesday, but Wednesday I'm having to stop 5 times because my mind is grabbing me, that practice is just as beneficial and yummy as the one that feels good. The perfectionistic place would say, oh, I've got to perform in this way. And the Pisces would say, it's Tuesday, it's Wednesday. Just be in the song that your higher self wants you to sing.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. So people are listening here and they're going, we can hear Hannah Bear in the background. We love her, but we don't want to hear her. And we had mic challenges today, and we had to release perfectionistic tendencies at this point and say, guys, this is life right now. Life's a little messy. We can be as pro as we want. And I know I shared a newsletter with people a week and a half ago saying, we're going through the trenches right now, folks. But that's for all of us right now. And I love that you said your inner world is really juicy right now, is really good, because that's how I'm seeing it. It's these waves of too much energy. Oh my God, and the physicality. But grounding in, going, wait a second, what a cool movie. And there is so much, as you said, awesome stuff going on the inside right now.
I had a day the other day where the morning hours were really awful. And then whatever, and then I had a beautiful practice and a shift, and I took a bath, and I was in bed, sort of just putting the day away. And I said to myself, what was today like? Was today a good day or bad? Like, I couldn't remember. So I had to go to my phone, and I looked to my friend who I would have texted how the day was going, and I saw it was a horrible morning. It was shitty as stuff. But I didn't stay there. I didn't get stuck there. I moved into the next moment, just like we moved into the joy and the juice of the conversation, not carrying the frustration of the bumps with the microphones with us. And that is also the message of Virgo Pisces, is about learning to do that more powerfully, more definitively, because that kind of orientation to the inner groove is where grace and ease come from.
Can you even say, I like to say it, it's kind of a good Jewish way of saying, aha, I got you. In other words, my phone, when it rings lately, and Jessica has taken note of this as well, it doesn't ring once. I pick up the phone and immediately there's a second person calling in. It will never at this point be just one. And it's like I'm on to the universe that it's messing with me at this time to help me, even if I don't get how. And so I can catch I can actually have a moment of humor as the poop's hitting the fan.
Very good. I love that. So the first eclipse season is in March, right? So
Yes.
we get 2 in every year. And right now the eclipses are only 2. Eclipses can come in 3s and 4s, but we're not in that kind of geometry these days. So it's just 2 at a time. The first one is in March, and this is a North Node eclipse, right? So the March eclipse season, you want to be thinking very much about your long-range plans, where you want to head next. If you know your natal chart, you need to know like where Pisces is in your chart and what house is that, and then you'll know a little bit more about what to focus on. But it's a big distinction to recognize the eclipse's direction.
Yeah.
North node versus south node, so that when we get into spring, which is a great time to have a north node eclipse, right? Because it's spring, there's the equinox, it's the astrological new year, and in that springtime moment, we will be sort of experiencing transformational eclipsey kind of energy pushing us, forward. And it's right in the middle of the outer planets getting juicy next year. And then our second eclipse season is in September. That's a South Node eclipse. So in the South Node eclipse, we're looking at transformational experiences that are about moving away from the past and letting go of things that no longer serve. And in terms of meeting an eclipse, it's no different than any new moon or full moon. They are just new moons and full moons. It's just that there's this phenomena happening of the shadow passing, which is sort of just like the computer being turned off and on again so that it works better, right? And so it's then important to focus in the South Node past or North Node future, depending on which one is which.
Sounds great. So, okay, so we've got that coming up. Now let's go to Chris's. Oh my gosh, golly.
Okay. All right, so here's where we get into territory where I want to just be not careful, but mindful of the examples I give are going to make it sound like only bad things happen when planets ingress. But we can certainly get a sense of this by watching Pluto, who's already done it. Aquarius rules technology. Technology has been outrageous this last couple of years. And interestingly, just since Pluto moved into Aquarius for good in November, there have been some wild technological things that have just occurred. Notably, the Willow chip out of Google creating quantum computing at a level faster than we've ever experienced before. That alone, as the first event on the planet reflecting Pluto in the sign of technology, tells you how technology is going to change over the next 20 years. So the ingress becomes important because it's like a new town. The planet has entered a new town. So I'm pointing out the technological expansions of the last couple of weeks so that when I also point out that I think France's government failed, the UK had some challenges. We went through a surprising and challenging election. See, like just since Pluto moved into Aquarius in November, shit has hit the fan in scary ways, right? And I can't not say that Pluto fast change and then Pluto slow change and then Uranus fast change isn't going to bring wild amounts of change. So back to the idea of ingressing. Pluto has done it. Deep, slow, revolutionary change in the direction of new technology and the possibility of creating a world order where all are cared for. Uranus is the agent of fast change. When Uranus moved into Aries, I'm forgetting what year that was, but I think the first week he was in there, there was that explosion in the Gulf of Mexico, the oil platform. That kind of thing will happen when the planet that brings sudden and fast moves into a new sign. You might see sudden and fast events and occurrences that rock your world and change it utterly very quickly. Moving into the sign of Gemini, that's going to be interesting for technology. Aquarius invented technology, which is why Pluto in Aquarius is reflecting shifts there. But technology belongs to Uranus. He's the planet of the higher octave of the mind, which is what technology and the internet is.
Yeah.
So, first and foremost, when Uranus moves into Gemini in, where is it? I can't find my notes. My notes are so, I really can't find it.
It's okay.
Where's that page?
This is the fun thing about live events. Everybody is patient.
Right? July, early July. So July 7th. Summertime is where it heats up. So if the slow change planet is in the air sign of Aquarius at around 1 degree, and the fast change planet capable of blowing up oil rigs, in the Gulf of Mexico. Again, the planets don't cause things; they reflect. Uranus didn't blow that up. Bad people did. So when the fast change planet moves into 0 degrees and 1 degree of Gemini, that's a trine. Trines are good energies. And this is visual, so it's important to note the air quotes, good. When I was first studying astrology 30 years ago, and I saw trines by transit, I assumed and interpreted then that a good thing would occur, something we would call good. But over the years, I've had to reinvent how I interpret trines. There's no such thing as good or bad in astrology. What there is in a trine is flow, utter flow. That matches and harmonizes. It's kind of like a bathroom sink with 2 faucets. Turn the hot all the way on, turn the cold all the way on. You get beautiful warm water in the sink flowing very fast.
Okay.
That's the image I want you to take into next summer when you have Uranus fast change, trining Pluto slow change. And so I think we also then need the words like revolutionary change, unbelievably fast change, and more importantly, unstable change. Uranus invented instability. This goes back to this idea of good and bad, and do the planets have a good and bad, demarcation? No, they don't. We do. We want things to always be stable, but are they? Rarely. And Uranus is the energy of instability with change. Pluto, not so much, because his changes are fast. His changes are slow. Uranus is the guy you call to come up and blow up the old building. Pluto is the guy you hire to make the plans, to do the survey, to dig the new foundation, to get the builders in, to get the new construction done. Slow, fast. What makes it what's called a grand sextile is when Neptune enters in March, Aries. So I'm backtracking in chronology. Pluto's already there. Neptune moves into Aries in March. July, Uranus moves into Gemini. That's a perfect grand sextile. Air, fire, air. So we've already got slow change, fast change. Now let's talk about Neptune, which we already have enough today so that there's a short recap. Spirit, inspiration, creativity. Here's another juicy personal thing that's available in this grand sextile. But now you have ideologies, which again, astrology doesn't say only positive ideology. You know, there are people who will fight for the changes they want. And Aries is the sign of war.
Oh my.
Now, if I were looking at a person experiencing these sextiles, it'd be like, oh my God, what an opportunity. What an opportunity to reinvent yourself. What an opportunity to bring your creative inspiration directly into changing the landscape of your life so that you could have more of that. Talk about the idea of instituting in you a kind that's so deep and abiding, it radically changes your life in a fast and a slow way because you have stepped onto that path in earnest. And that energy is supported by this grand sextile. You've never been artistically creative in action because you're afraid to do it, but you know you've got something to say, and suddenly the artistic planet of inspiration, Neptune, is in the sign of action and movement, and you suddenly pick up your tools and start creating in a way that changes how you see and live in your life. Like, I could go on and on and on and on about anything at the personal level that one could make with these energies. And sextiles are potential, so if you pick up behavior, you're gonna make hay with what you create and attend to next year. And the world will be in some unstable radical change because it's changing.
Well, you used an interesting word earlier that I had to bookmark and come back to, because you threw out all these descriptors for change, and one of the words is not my favorite. Although it actually, for a lot of things, it can be. In this case, I'm not so sure. Although, if everything is God, nothing is not. If it's all here to serve us, but you use the term, Michael, revolutionary.
What would the conversation be like right now if we were talking about what's happening in the United States, but not through the lens of astrology? I mean, I'm not putting you on the spot here, but you understand I'm...
Go for it.
Well, I don't have the answer, I have the question. Like,
okay.
The question is like, if I live in America, and I see what's happening in America, and it looks like civil war all over again, and Neptune is moving into the sign he was in when the country was in actual civil war, then you cannot separate what's been happening in the United States over the last 10, 15 years and this set of changes that are coming next year and in 2026. So this is where I, on a personal level, feel in a little bit of a quandary. I don't use astrology to follow politics. I don't use astrology to look at pop culture events. I use astrology and teach astrology solely for my personal unfolding, my self-investigation, my creative desires, and I teach others to do the same. So sitting here with you today, and then I'm doing my webinar on New Year's Day where I'm gonna do the details of all of this stuff. It's like, how do I maintain my role as astrologer who talks about psyche and healing and self-investigation and relationships and creativity and ambitions without addressing the potential of revolution in America? Because it's revolutionary what's happening here, and it's only going to heat up over the next 4 years, and you certainly don't need an astrologer to tell you that. And the astrology reflects big challenges with this. If you don't mind, this would be a good time to add Saturn.
Please, go for it. And for people, there's some people saying that there's audio cutting. There's some people that saying the audio is perfect. So I'm not sure what's going on. And on our end, the audio seems to be fine. I don't know if YouTube is having some sort of a challenge. My apologies, but
Yeah.
we're getting it strong 10 strength here. So my apologies, whatever's going on there. But that maybe has everything to do with what's going on
Well,
right now.
I think it might be the Schuman resonance, which is off the charts these couple of days. So, okay. We've been talking about the ingress of outer planets. This is partly why we've been talking so much about the possibility of big events in the world at large on the political stage, because outer planets reflect the collective and our higher self more than our pedestrian embodied journeys, walking through our lives. And so to have Saturn, a social planet, directly participating in this grand sextile means that everything that we've been talking about, slow change, fast change, ideology driven movement, and the potential for instability and revolutionary change, has the planet of boots on the ground difficulty, breakdown, delay, lessons in the sign of action and war, conjunct Neptune. They're going to gather together and move over into Aries at the same time. That's kind of like an astrological, wet dream, because zero Aries is a world axis point. Zero Aries, zero
Ooh.
Cancer, zero Libra, zero Capricorn are the first days of the seasons. And so when we have our equinoxes and solstices, they are at these 0-degree points. So to have Neptune and Saturn meet up and transit ingressing Aries at the same time and being conjunct at 0 means that what they are doing cosmically will be reflected very prominently on the planet as a whole. This sort of guarantees that there are, outside of what's personal and possible in these energies for us in our
Yeah.
private lives, there's just no way the planet is not in active, problematic difficulty coming from these outer planet ingresses. So there's just no way not to say that. Like, I can't leave that out.
Meaning everything that we're seeing around us, or energetically, or they're one and the same.
Let me give you an example from 2020.
Thank you.
Pluto and Saturn gathered in Capricorn in January. And that was the, oh my God, like we've never seen the kind of changes that will happen, right? Because we've got the higher planet of Pluto and the social planet of Saturn, which invented structures, and they were all in Capricorn, the sign of structures. One of the things that led the shifts on the planet in 2020 was the virus. Jupiter was with them in January
Yeah.
at 22 Capricorn. Jupiter is a social planet that invented travel. So Jupiter hanging out with Pluto and Saturn in January while a virus is emanating out of China. Jupiter's the energy of spreading stuff all over the world, because that's what Jupiter is. It's the energy of travel and education and expansion and movement and other cultures. So it's the social planet of Jupiter that spread COVID all over the place. So by the same token, what I'm saying is there's this backdrop for unstable revolutionary change, but it is Saturn moving into Aries that's going to make it a problem for everybody on the planet. No one's going to sit out what happens next year in governments and wars and in the United States. No one's going to sit it out. So
And
it comes back to how are you preparing to live in a body that knows how to be clear about who you are and what you're up to be in the world, but not of it, so that you're not pummeled by it, and you
Yeah.
find your way of serving, whether it's just privately through your creative expressions or like you and I do, serving by teaching. And I think that we're being beautifully prepared for this. You know, all of these outer planets are in a grand sextile this year, but they're in earth and water signs. So we're being grounded in what change looks like, so that when it becomes fire and air, we have been through a year where we have been learning who we are in a deep way, in a deep embodied way, and we're ready. Even just the double retrograde of Mercury and Mars, I think, is preparing us to have a better walk and talk next year, to meet these planetary shifts with not only grace, but the urge to serve and help.
Okay, that's interesting. All of this is interesting. But what you've said it so many times before, so forgive me. What I'm hearing you say right now is, if we take this time to really dive in on the inside and get grounded and anchored now, that when stuff goes down, let's say it is a black flag, red flag, drone flag event takes place 6 months from now, we're good. We're okay. Yes. We're gonna make it through.
I'm going to add something else to that, Michael. I'm going to tell you, whether you believe it or not, sitting there listening to this, I promise that the entire year has given us energies that have been preparatory. The people who get my daily astro alerts know this, because I've been talking about it all year. And every time we've had a major event or an eclipse or a retrograde, I've talked a lot about this is preparing us for next year. So indeed, we've got simultaneous personal planet retrogrades that are so helpful. As we do this, it is accurate that Mercury's almost done with his full retrograde. In other words, he'll be out of his whole wrap-up. He's not backwards anymore. But to have the planet of mind and the planet of body both retrograde at the same time and in like trines with each other, they're in fire signs of Sag and Leo. Mars is in Cancer too, but he's been Leo, in this last few months.
Yeah.
That has absolutely been reflecting people getting into a more authentic alignment of their walk and their talk, just by virtue of those two planets being retrograde simultaneously. And before Mars finishes his, Venus will go retrograde next year. That's preparatory. That means how we walk through our lives right now is being activated by Mars retrograde. He was in Cancer, moved into Leo, and we'll move back into Cancer in a little bit. That tells a story of, first, I'm in preparation and self-care and behind the scenes, and I don't have to move. I'm in Cancer, I'm at home. And then I move into Leo, and it's like I'm ready to center myself and be strong and visible. And then Mars says, nope. You need to learn more about caring for self. And in about, 5-6 days from now, 7, soon, Mars will move back into Cancer for the rest of his backward journey. And so that alone, that cycle alone, is teaching every single one of us in a body how to pull back from centering yourself and moving out with what you want to create, so that there's more power of inner strength, so that when Mars finishes up and moves into Leo in earnest when the cycle is over, then we're ready to walk a more powerful walk. Our talk is always being reworked, and then we'll rework how we feel in our hearts, and how we give and receive love in the sort of late winter, early spring from Venus's retrograde. And that all happens before the big summertime huzzah. I'm
muting now because people are having so many sound challenges. I'm just going to one at a time. I was hoping you'd get to Venus because Venus
Yeah.
has to do with love, has to do with relationships.
Yes.
Is this mean the relationships for all of us either get rocky or things are like pulled back to be revealed so that we can have our relationship at a higher level?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And yes. See, here's the thing about, first of all, you probably know this by now because you've had me on a bunch of times and we've talked a lot. I don't give a shit about outer planet retrogrades. I don't talk about them. I'm sometimes mocking about the astrologers who are out there running around doing, memes about
Yeah.
Neptune's turning around and it's going to change everything. And it's not. It never does. Because we don't feel them. They are so big in their forward and direct motion. We don't change. You don't change how you do anything because with Neptune retrograde or forward. I am so sensitive in my body that I would go to my death on this
Yeah.
because I feel every little MF movement of energy and I can't feel anyway. I'm getting off on a tangent. So, but personal planet retrogrades are the best thing that ever happened to us in a solar system because they are opportunities to take whatever consciousness we're talking about, mental and communicative, embodied and choice and action oriented with Mars and Venus, the giving and receiving of love. So because they are personal planets, they impact all of us at the personal level. So you could never ascribe a one-size-fits-all notion to a personal planet retrograde. All going to be about love, the giving and the receiving of it, the processing of your emotional body so that you can read the room better, because that's one of the things that the emotional body does for us. It's got 2 words, and no, but if you learn how to read it, it will guide you beautifully. So for the person who needs to have processes around loving better within their intimate relationship that they're already in, it's in there for you. The person who wants to find a relationship, it's in there for you to dial in, to do inner work around readying yourself for that. The signs where any process, any retrograde process sort of counts, and this is a transit between Pisces and Aries. That's interesting to me when it comes to the idea of a heart and an emotional body that can handle everything that's coming. We could describe revolutionary change on the planet as like a rebirth. And the birth canal of the zodiac is 30 degrees Pisces, 0 degrees Aries. It's the most sensitive point. It's when all formlessness and oneness and unity turns into form. It's a birthing.
Yeah.
So I love the idea that the Venus retrograde is gonna, this is sort of like archetypal woo-woo, but like the Venus retrograde is gonna help the world become better birthers of the new world that we are ushering in.
That brings up a big picture to me. I don't view humanity as almost 8 billion individual souls. I see humanity as a beingness. And I guess that's the macros, the micro, the micros. I mean, it's that fractal holographic everything. And so humanity, or the earth herself, is going through each one of these pieces right now.
Yes. And I think it's that big, Michael. It's that big. The changes that are happening, that are reflected by the astrology, is so enormous right now. I believe that when you live as if we are one organism, as we are, I think grace is easier. Also, this, you'll probably do this to me at the end of this interview, which you do every freaking time we get together. Like, what should our people do? Or like, what do you say? And it's like, it's always the same fucking thing. It's like, Do your inner work. Know who you are. Find a way to serve. You know, I read in my new moon article that we're in the new moon in Capricorn tomorrow. And in my new moon article, I said, the person who lives alone in the woods, but is honoring the sacred land, is doing more to help the collective than the ambitious person who's on fire, creating exactly what they want, but whose work is lifting up nobody. Because we are all one. Which means that if there are 8 billion of us, we only need maybe 1 billion to tip consciousness into a shift. And so that's what gives me hope. I'm not a political activist. I can't go out there and yell for what I think is happening politically. I also don't give a shit. Like, I have a beautiful, in the world and not of it. Like, I watch... I'm deeply connected to what's happening because of my love for humanity. I'm grateful that I can watch what's happening in the news and not pummel under it. And so because I don't know how to be an activist, and I'm not the one you want to send into the room to have the hard conversation with the person who doesn't believe and agree with me. I'm not that guy. I'm the absolute wrong person because I'll just evolve into, calling people stupid. Not my gift, but I do know how to teach people to find grace by healing wounds and in advancing their conscious awareness. And that helps. That helps because the individual fractals of us get lit up. And when more are lit up, we have a different experience on the planet.
Thank you. So it jumps ahead of things, but it begets the question. And I don't know that you can see this. You can see me stammering over the question. So I know how stupid this question is, but I tend to ask all my guests it anyway, because I feel there's a preponderance of the evidence. Does the evidence seem to you that humanity is actually going to choose to make it through this time and not have the reset? You did mention rebirth.
That's such an interesting question, and I'm going to answer totally transparently. It's taking me so long.
Oh no!
I want to answer this carefully. I'll refer to it as this chair because it's something I say in sessions. Like this chair, like this is a chair. This is a perspective. Like if I'm on my couch, I'm in a different perspective. I'm cuddling with my puppy, and but in this chair, I have a very interesting perspective because I do watch what's happening, because I do have this profound clarity about connecting with individuals to be of service. And I'm someone who can watch I get my news on TikTok. I can watch the news on TikTok and not be triggered by it. I have the things that bother me, and there are moments in the day where I have to pretend to murder a certain congressperson. And so I give myself 7 seconds to picture my hands around her neck, and then it passes. And I'm not kidding. I allow those rageful moments to have a little breath in me because they are there, but then they just leave, right? And then I'm not bothered, and I'm sitting in this chair, and I'm able to look out where truly, in a dispassionate way, I can see the age of Aquarius unfolding bumpily but beautifully, and I can see the world ending cataclysmically, and I don't have a thought about what it's going to be. I have more curiosity about anything, more than anything else. In my heart, I have a belief in the resilience of the human race. I have a belief that technology can save us, which some high-level thinkers had said, if you think that, you're mistaken. But I do believe that not only that technology can save us, I think it's supposed to. I think the age of Aquarius is an age of technology. I think the merging of biology and technology will save the human race. I think there's a day when artificial intelligence will be able to remove the murder gene from the genome of the human being. I believe that possibility. Now, I think we're talking about 1,000 years from now, and we have to make it. Will we make it through this churning?
Yeah.
I have to believe that we will, because I have the urge to survive, thrive, and help. What would be the alternative? If I really thought we were doomed, I don't know that I would do what I do. I used to get asked a lot about, like, would we blow ourselves up? Does astrology tell us, will the human race blow itself up with a nuclear war? And I thought, no. The whole system is designed to be in this constant tension. That's important to say. Every generation since the since the Industrial Revolution has felt like everything was going to end because things got out of hand. People thought that women's uteruses would fly out if they rode a train. But every generation thought this is the last generation. We're going to end life as we know it on the planet. We're not designed to accelerate to an explosion and then be gone. I think we're designed to keep a tension of opposites as we morph into new shapes and new shapes and new shapes and new shapes. So I do believe in the possibility of the future of the human race as a dynamic and exciting, vibrant, technology-driven society where all human beings are cared for. I do think we'll get through this. I do. I do.
Woo-hoo. All right, I'm going to go to some questions here. Then I might dive back in with a question or two more. But we've had a bunch of live questions come in. Actually, before we do that, you mentioned Schuman resonance. Did you mention Schuman resonance off the chart? What do you see? Because I know it's been going up and up. What have you been hearing, seeing? And this is off the astrology side of things.
I don't have any more information than that. I notice these things because my body is very sensitive. And the minute I saw, like, I've been on staycation the last few days, and I've just been feeling more than the chronic fatigue. That's a daily thing for me. I've been feeling kind of not well in a particular way, that when I saw that the Schumann resonance was off the charts, I was like, oh, I recognize this feeling.
Gotcha.
Same thing with solar activity. I sometimes will feel a certain kind of way when those vibrations are up, and I've certainly been feeling yucky for like 3 or 4 days.
And it's interesting because solar flares seem to be, it's been an interesting year for that, and I don't think there's any end in sight to that. Richard asked a question that I don't think is really an astrology question, but it kind of goes along with what you're talking about. He said USGS is saying there's highly active tectonic activity in the western USA Cascade Mountain Range right now. Any possibility of massive eruption? Sounds this is Mount St. Helens.
Well, this astrology does not predict weather or earthquakes. It can't. One of the things that is true about consciousness, that consciousness is equal parts unfolding plan and random chaos. And something that spiritual people don't ever like to talk about. I talk about it all the time. 50% of the equation is chaos, and it is not predictable. And so weather is one of those things. Earthquake is another.
Yeah.
Cancer is another. You can certainly get a disease and work with it from a perspective of how did I create this? But there's also random and chaos notions about who gets sick with what. Right? So this becomes important, I think, to talk about whenever we're looking at sort of accelerations. But I got to agree with Richard. Like, I've noticed that there seems to be an acceleration of seismic activity, including a recent extra blow in the one in the United States, the Yellowstone.
Oh yes.
yeah. And the Pacific Rim has been. So astrology doesn't speak to whether or not something is possible, earthquake-wise, but things are heating up in politics, things are heating up in media, things are heating up in personal lives, and things are heating up in the earthquakes. So it's heating up everywhere.
And it sounds very plausible. Usually I do at the once a month I do a channeling with Archangel Michael, and I do a channeling prediction for the next month, which I just cringe and hide under the table before I do it. It's not the thing I like to do. And I do it begrudgingly. This time I've had you on instead. Woohoo! And at the same time, this energy suggests that to have another, earthquake, volcano, all of these things isn't sort of outside of the norm of all of the energies aligning for everything that you're describing at this point and being the messenger or the vehicle of that great change.
Well, I don't think anybody benefits from wondering whether there will be a horrible earthquake next year, but I will say this. If there are any difficult landmass shifts, the astrology will be reflecting the aftermath and the movement of people to help and move, all the stuff that happens as a result of something major occurring. So I can imagine in some of the instability and slow change, fast change next year might include more seismic experiences. But again, I want to be really clear. Astrology doesn't predict earthquakes, but they might reflect the actions around an earthquake.
Thank you. Can astrology address, would that be a good thing to look at, the perception of time speeding up right now? It feels like God, the universe itself, has stepped on the accelerator to the max.
I wish I had the data about this, but in the measurement of time, time is faster. Time has gotten faster. The amount is this negligible, like a second faster. Like, I'm making that up. But it is something I've read scientifically, so I'm not making that up. I don't have any data for you. But when I thought about that, when I read about that 10 years ago or so, I was like, oh, we would feel that in a way that we are feeling that tiny infinitesimal change because it's a change. So astrology is interesting because it moves with us in terms of time. And so nothing has accelerated in terms of how many 24-hour days make up a year and how we get from one day to the next. It just flows astrologically, but the feeling sensation is that it's accelerated beyond anything I remember when I was younger, but I can't explain that astrologically.
Gotcha. No
because
worries.
It's moving at the same pace as time has always moved.
From CB, are Aquarius, does that mean Aquarians? Aquarius going to be more affected, of course, in a fantastic way? CB asks.
So here's the challenge with even just that question. And I've seen so many of these awful pop astrologers are out there going, you fixed signs are in for it with Pluto in Aquarius. There's some truth to that because, Pluto in Aquarius is going to conjunct everybody with an Aquarius sun, oppose everybody with a Leo sun, and square everybody with a Taurus or a Scorpio sun. That is true. I have Leo Sun and Leo Venus, which means that Pluto is going to oppose my Sun and Venus. Oy, brutal. That's going to happen in 18 years. 18 years from now, I don't need to be worrying about that. Yes. Which means that any Aquarius, Leo, or Taurus, or Scorpio Sun who will receive an opposition, a conjunction, or a square from Pluto and Aquarius to their sun, it will impact you in like the 2 or 3 years when it's geometrically near where you were born. So if you are an Aquarius who was born in the first 4 days of Aquarius, you might have a wild year of change and transformation. But only if it's the first couple of days of Aquarius. Then the next few days will be 5 years from now. And that, you know what I'm saying, how it goes?
Yeah. Okay.
Pluto doesn't impact you for 20 years. So yes, the answer is yes. You will have a death, rebirth of self that could be extraordinary. And it'll hit when Pluto is at the degree point that your sun sign is at in your natal chart. So get your chart out, look at the number, and then you'll sort of know that Pluto roughly moves 2 degrees, 3 degrees a year.
Thank you. Is there a time you're either most excited about for this year or most concerned about for this year?
Well, the most concern would simply be that the sort of summer months sort of amplifies this sextile that will be in the cosmos, so that somewhere I even have the actual. My notes are disorganized. July, August is sort of the dicey months of the year. So I'll just say summer is when to expect and be ready for sudden things, pivots, changes, unexpected shifts, things that don't, that are unexpected and rock your world and the planet. There's always the sort of loveliness of Jupiter and what Jupiter is doing. I'm happy because Jupiter is moving into Cancer. That's the sign of my North Node. So Jupiter will spend the first part of the year sort of finishing up his run through Gemini and then move into Cancer in June. So the first half of the year, Jupiter represents manifestation, how you approach expansion and goals to get bigger and better in all ways. And so in Gemini, Jupiter is about ideas, the sharing of them, making connections, gathering with people that have like-minded sort of attitudes. And then when Jupiter moves into Cancer, I don't know anybody, maybe outside of myself, who is good at self-care. I'm a master at self-care. My boundaries around what I need and what I'm obligated to are so strong today. I like the idea of Mars and his retrograde spending a lot of time in Cancer and then having Jupiter enter Cancer in the second half of the year. So back to the idea that Mars retrograde in Cancer is helping us all find inside of our bodies the place where we are willing to put self-care above how we're perceived or feeling like failing if we're not, myopically ambitious. And so I like then that Jupiter will go into that space in the second half of the year in early 26 to foster the idea that when we are restful, when we take the time to plan and prepare, our expansion and manifestation is more powerful because we're coming from a deep center that is more ready to move out into the world in a creative way. So I love that. I also love the Venus retrograde. It might be bumpy, but I personally have benefited so much from every Venus retrograde that has come by working with it. And I always do webinars for the personal planet retrogrades like that because they're valuable to put an order into the universe. Venus going retrograde between Pisces and Aries is how can I find love in the inner sanctum where it's easy? Venus is exalted in Pisces. It's just love is love is love is love. And then move that out into the world in an Aries-like fashion, saying, how can I, put this love into action in the outside world. So for anybody who's like looking to cultivate relationship that doesn't exist, the Venus retrograde is perfect for that. And you do it as a ritual exercise where you spend some time in the inner places where you learn where love, forgiveness, compassion, and oneness with all lives in you, so that you can take it out into the world more powerfully. And when the solar system is doing it, so are we.
Thank you. So, kind of a personal question. I'm going to get back to the questions from others here, and this may be a silly one, but if we choose in co-creation with the universe to bring another Sandler into the fold, is it best to wait till we get past 2025 to shoot for a target for when to bring in another spiritual being?
No, I would go for it. I would go for it because the energy of next year is so about new
Yeah.
possibilities.
Yeah.
Even Jupiter moving into Cancer is suggestive of a kind of nesting, preparation, pregnancy possibility. And yeah, I think this is a good moment, Michael, because, when I'm asked a question, the channel is triggered, right? Like I didn't say that just because I felt that way. Like I have a way I work, and if I'm in channel, it doesn't matter what the question you ask. The answer comes from this alignment. And so then I'm sometimes curious about what comes out of my mouth, so I might say more. And so it's like the sense of yes, 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 go, because this is the moment that like, yes, 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 go. It's like the gun gets shot and the race begins. Why wait if the race has begun? I might say, maybe wait to the second half of the year in terms of trying. But I don't know if I believe that. Well, I say that because that's when the new popping energy happens. Is
Okay.
in June and beyond. But yeah, it feels. Yeah, I can't think of any reason to wait or to put that off.
Gotcha. Well, it begets, and thank you. It begets. I've got people asking questions about location. This gets to the astrocartography, location and pain, location and energy, location and exhaustion. But it gets me thinking not just location, but is there a time in the year where it is going to be easier? For instance, you said with long tail COVID, you're getting your bootiest kickitus to the maximus right now. And I've got to be honest, this year has been the year of swollen gut and brain for me, and figuring all of this stuff out. Is that something that's going to abate as we get into later in the year, or it's just we get to work on it even more?
Yeah, you should see I'm sort of shaking my head no here.
Yeah.
One of the things that can happen in doing a very, general overview of the year is we talk about the big epic moments that we know are going to be big. And then we're not talking about like a month where the personal planets are crashing against each other in a way that is just like freaking brutal, but it's not a big energy, so I won't prepare you for it, right? So
Yeah.
I think about this sometimes during the year when I'm writing about the astrology every day, where it's like, oh, wow, this little setup that isn't a big sweeping picture, so it would never have hit my radar to talk about in the yearly overview. So I'm remembering that when you ask that question, when it's like, well, no, you've got retrogrades peppered out through the year for Mercury, Venus retrograde in the middle, maxing over it. You got eclipse seasons that come in. You've got these ingresses, and then they all move back into their old signs and move into the new signs again next year. So it's like, I'm the hopeful astrologer too. Like I'm the guy who's not fear mongering, but No, I would be irresponsible if I told you, oh, yes, this month is going to be easy, because none of them are going to be. Ha- were any this year?
Uh, like I said, it's off air beforehand. This is where we've been getting our Bootius Kickitus to the Maximus, and at the same time, I've also said that I know this is really all here to serve us. It's ugly. It's messy. Forgive me, folks. We've had audio tonight. It's ugly. It's messy. This isn't, some people are saying X flare right now. This is the energy right now that we're all going through.
Yeah, and it's radical acceptance has saved my ass. Just the idea of there is nothing I can do to change this circumstance, and so it becomes a non-issue. I'm very good at this, but not everybody is. A lot of people stay mentally fixated on the thing that's problematic, and that's where we suffer. We suffer because of what we're focusing on and where this is going. So I feel very blessed to have, learned a lot about living in a disciplined mind so that I don't allow my mind to stay in a perseveration of what is difficult. And I'm naturally good at being in the world and of it.
Okay, we'll start to wind things down a little bit here because I know your energies, although you're
Just happen.
Yeah, but can you go there and then we'll talk about where people go to find your work. You just said I have a very disciplined mind. What is it you do so that other people can learn from that?
Okay. First of all, it's incredibly simple. There is no complications to how you change the thinking patterns you're having. The first step, though, is you do have to be aware of how you think. Most people, I saw a video on TikTok of a woman doing her housework, talking to herself. I talk to myself out loud all the time, except that I watched what she was doing. She was having complaint conversation towards people who weren't in the room.
Oh, no.
So I have a rule that I teach and that I live by. I don't speak to anybody who's not in the room. And if I find myself fantasizing about a conversation, I stop it immediately. And I have about an 11-second tolerance for that. And I always know when I've left the moment because I'm talking to somebody who's not in the room. So that's one sort of like discipline that I live that would be helpful for people to take on. So, you cannot stop the first thought that comes. They come from the unconscious, and the unconscious is vast. But you can stop the perseveration of the thought, and this is simple as pie. You're brushing your teeth, you're complaining about something, and you say, stop. I'm not interested in that thought anymore. Yep. I'm interested in all is well. And I even mean that you don't even have to have a clear thought you're trying to redirect to. It can be all is well, right? So if I'm in a complaint about my energy and I find myself saying, this is awful, I'm going to stop that thought and say, I'm not interested in that thought. I'm interested in the thought of I radically accept exactly what my body is offering me today, and I can move through this with grace and ease. Now, that's all you need to know. You have the thought, you stop the thought, you replace the thought. You might have to do this thousands of times before it becomes a habit. But let me tell you, Michael, your thinking mind has no value. None. It's good when you're having conversations. It's good when you're taking your internal ideas and conveying them out into the world. There's all of these juicy, wonderful things we can do with the mind. But what we should not do with it is imagine that it's who we are. And so this disciplined mind says, I am not the mind. I am me. I am. and the mind is just the navigator. Astrology gives me the perfect picture of this. We are the sun. I am Michael. I have a thought mechanism, Mercury, that zips around the sun. I like to think of the mind, the thinking mind, as something that as we're coming in from the, ethers or the past life or something, just as we fall down the chute into our bodies to pop out mom, they stand there with like a nail gun and they shoot your mind in. It's not us at all.
Yeah.
But we can't navigate here without it. But it's only designed to express our ideas and keep us safe. And we use it for everything. So, in fact, I'm teaching a new class this year on the disciplined mind. I've been thinking about it for years, and I'm finally like, this is the year. So I'm teaching a class because, Michael, it's simple. Simple. What it is Herculean task to bust through decades of habitual thought pattern that you think is you. So, again, I'm repeating myself, but you can't stop the first thought, but you can stop the second and the 27th and the 365th.
Thank you. On that note, where can people go, Michael, to find your work, to find your upcoming courses, to find your daily Astro Alert, and what in the world is that, and to find out more?
MichaelLennox.com. That's where everything is. In fact, the thing that's up next is on January 1st, New Year's Day at 10 a.m. Pacific. I will be doing my astro overview with very detailed, comprehensive sort of description of all of the moving parts, and then a 12-month sort of running, forecast. And I have lots of handouts. Part of why I couldn't read my notes today is that Lisa made all of these really pretty handouts. But I can't read them, so I have to get my notes from my typed out note line. But so that's something I do every year, and I love to do it. And I don't think my first class starts until late January, early February. But I've all my standard classes of shadow work, self-investigation using myth and fairy tale. I have a new class that I did this year that was a gangbuster class, which is healing your anxious attachment. Can't wait to do that one again in the fall. And then this new class of disciplined mind will show up somewhere in the next 6 or 7 months. But MichaelLennox.com is the place to find it. The daily astro alerts are something that I love doing. When I was learning astrology, my astrology teacher, Stephanie Azaria, did just that. Every day she wrote about transits and described what was going on, and it was the most profound learning tool for me, because it meant that every single day from a master astrologer, I was getting information about what was happening in a detailed astrological way. It's not a horoscope. It's not like, oh, you Capricorns are going to have, a good day today, and Pisces features prominently. That's not good astrology. So they come out at 6 p.m. every day. You can get them by email or text. They're very, very detailed. The outline of that becomes the Red Robe Astrology videos that I do on social media, Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. But I think they're extraordinary. And if you want to learn astrology as well as govern or guide, look at what the day's energies bring with you, check out the daily astro alerts.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And from an astrology point of view, and then from a personal point of view, this is the last question I've got. What brings you the greatest hope for 2025?
Well, from an astrological perspective, it's watching life events wake people up into more of an activation. Like, I'm seeing that out there, and I'm excited about Neptune into Aries and watching something that I predicted when Pluto moved into Capricorn, that Pluto's moving through Capricorn would create movements towards peace that would be separate. And that happened. What I believe Pluto and Aquarius can bring is a coalition of separate movements into something more global. And I see Neptune moving into Aries as leading that, and it gives me hope that we will eventually create worlds and governments that care for human beings. And from a personal perspective, I would say that I am so grateful to love what I do, that my body and its challenges don't mean much compared to the service I get to do and how satisfying it is. So on a day when all I can do is the 2 clients and I have to reschedule the 3rd and I'm napping in between everything, that's still a good day because I love what I do.
I don't think thank you is strong enough.
Thank you, Mike.
It's, and that you took the time and the energy, because this is a big energy, hopefully infusion on some level as well.
Oh, absolutely. That's the beauty of doing this kind of work too.
And we love you. We love you.
Thank
We
you.
love you. We love you. So thank you so much, Michael, for everyone out there. Everyone out. I've got to mention just a couple things since we were a live event. Dr. Stephen Greer, tomorrow night, we're going to be talking about all things drones. And he knows what they are, where they're coming from, why they're here. So we're going to talk about that with Dr. Stephen Greer tomorrow night. This is the guy who runs the whole disclosure movement, who's met with all of the U.S. presidents since, I think it was the 1970s, along with other presidents around the world. We also have our School of Mystics starting our new year, so do check that out in the link down below. We've got our daily woohoo, which is an uplifting, inspiring message each and every day, and automatic writing. We've got a huge 7-week program for the new year, new you on automatic writing, so link down below for that. So sending so much love your way for everyone out there. This is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun. Oh, I guess as Dr. Michael Lennox would say, fasten your seatbelt, baby, because Toto, are we in for a ride? And above and beyond all else, shine bright. Woohoo! How does it get any better than this? Thank you so much,
welcome,
Michael.
What a pleasure. Thank you.
It
Talk to
goes
you later.
both ways. All right, let's
right.
see if I can hear
Ciao.
that ending button.
Every day there's a new horizon. Birds keep on singing, earth keeps on spinning. Time to toss any fears that rule you. Dance to vibrations, no limitations.